Teaming. There we go. Let's kill this. That's fine. Alright, how we doing here? This is just me, like, doing everything I can to get... Yeah, there we go. We're just going to keep myself muted. Boop. Here we go. Boop. Do it. Send it. Yeah, we did that. And did that. There we go. Looking good, buddy. Looking good, me. Alright, let's show our chat. I'm going to pop the chat out. I'm getting good at this. I'm getting to the point where I'm not just sitting here, like, working on this for hours and hours every single time when I want to do something. Alright, so we don't need this. Oh, I have two chats. I've double chatted it up. Fair enough. Okay, so hello everyone. We don't know any of it's actually watching. Yeah. We're doing a writing stream today. What are we writing? Well, we're trying to finish up our Kickstarter, Acid and Steel. And we've gotten pretty far. I am on page 259, starting on page 260 today. And, like, looking over what I've actually done so far, it is an extremely big amount of stuff. Like, it's lots. Like, look at all this. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you can see I've got some really early art assets getting put in this layout. I've got a nice textured background we put here, page numbers, wonderful two-column layout, nice for absorbing information. We've got, I think, everything or nearly everything from the demons. I might sprinkle these around a little bit more. I like them just right here, just taking up this whole page. It feels very kung fu to me. But yeah, so as you can tell, I've been working on this for a little more than a year now. There was a lot of pre-writing done too, so largely I've just been finishing up doing the demons, which have wound up being really a lot of fun and play. And I've got those guys done, and we've been working on getting the robots done. We're really kind of doing two supplements in one here. Always getting more bang for your buck here at the Mushroom Press. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to clean these up a little bit. I think I actually have versions of these that are transparent that I'm going to use here. I just didn't use them in the initial... Yeah, see, like this guy's transparent. So there's... Oh, no, he's not. Look at that. Okay, well, I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure I have versions of these that are transparent from the artist that I can use here. Because there's nothing behind them. There's no reason that they should have a solid background. But yeah, I'm going to go through and do some editing. This is all placeholder stuff right now. This looks really nice. I'm really happy with these assets. It's a little far to the left, isn't it? Why are you over here instead of there? You never know what you're going to find whenever you start just kind of going in and looking at the layout. It's like, why is this so far over? Why wouldn't it be, like, here? Is it because it's not enough room? Them is the last word. Yeah, I think there's maybe just not quite enough to put... Yeah, there's them. No, it's there. Okay. I don't know why... Why did that look like that? But yeah, so... And some of them have, like, for the most part, you can see we have these nice two-column layouts. This is a master page that I just applied pretty brazenly to everything. And then a lot of pages have these more unusual layouts where I've put assets all around. And if you look at it, yeah, in preview mode, you can see it's got a pretty nice layout. It's a little bit dense here, but dense is good when it comes to content, right? And I did a lot in the core book where I would take big bricks of text like this in in these charts, and I would crush down the text so that I could fit more in. And it was more interested in making certain there was a unity of layout with the boxes. Here I'm a little less interested in that and a little more interested in just making things as legible as possible considering the space constraints. Also keeping it as, as much on 1 or 2 pages as possible. Layout is not actually my forte, but I'm having fun with it. And I think ultimately, if you look at like the lores here, now we're getting to the relevant part of the writing stream. If you look at the lores here, you can see that I really did get to a point where there's a good balance of legibility. So if you're actually looking at the page, right, it's like this is the smallest text and it's reasonably legible, but a good balance of legibility and I won't say uniformity, but like kind of uniformity, right? It's a more or less repeatable, recognizable set of chunks of info. So if you flip through these and you familiarize yourself with them, they'll be really easy to read. And this is what we're going to be writing today. We're going to be writing bestiary and lores. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the lores I've already written for the hellish underworld of Naraka, which my interest in Naraka as a setting element for this game, actually predates it by quite a bit. When I was running Legends of the Wooloo, when it was brand new and just released, my one of my players wanted to be from Hell, wanted to be like a demon, and I had to look something up and make a lore sheet about it. And Naraka just sounded like it was an extremely cool name for Hell back then, and so I just kind of adopted it whenever I was making this game. And this is the first time that I've looked into it in detail. It looks really cool. Bandit hideout, tribe of outcasts, lovely stuff. But yeah, so this is what we're going to be doing today, except for the robots. Ooh, look at that. Missed a couple. Yeah, people are talking to me. Which one of my mini tabs shall I go to? Here we go. Okay, a little thumbs up. Oh, that's my peeps. Hi, peeps. I'm watching Joel right now, and he's watching you back. How do you feel? Alright. I'm not good at this. There we go. There we go. Alright. So, the lures are one of the biggest legacies I kind of got from Legends of the Wooloo. Their idea about lures was that they were like a narrative device where you as a player could like purchase aspects of the ongoing story with your experience points. And so you got to declare with that investment what was going to be relevant to your character. I want one of the Emperor's minions to show up to get involved in this Imperial assassination plot, right? And one of the interesting things they did with that was they said, okay, well, you can do that as a player, but the GM, whenever you do heroic deeds, can also generate XP that he then spends on entangling you in these things. So you do a heroic deed in the presence of one of these guys and get their attention. The mechanical representation of that is that the more heroic your deed, the higher your virtue, the more XP he's able to invest in it, and the more you become entangled in it, whether you want to be or not. So that's interesting until you think about it and you realize that role-playing games already naturally do that. You don't really need to have a mechanical representation of getting involved in the world. The presupposition of the design of your game is that you will do so. What is this rule doing, right? Like, if I as a GM want a plot to happen, want characters to show up, want something that I'm interested in the setting of the game to become relevant, what's stopping me from making it so? It just seems like this unnatural, like, artificial way of, like, creating this really elaborate social contract that, like, why would you do that? Because at the end of the session, you only have so much time to devote to anything, right? And so, like, are you looking at, like, this giant, ever-changing pie chart of XP investments in plots and saying, okay, this is how the session breakdown should look? Well, if you're doing that, then the worst game you could possibly do it in would be Legends of the Wooloo, in which a single combat round could take over an hour. So, it was interesting on paper, but in practice it was completely unworkable. So I just use lores a little more classically. Like I kind of use them like setting. I take my inspiration from Yunsuin and similar things like that, and I think Carcosa was another one, where you just have big lists of setting elements, and whenever you need something as a GM, because the players have went somewhere that you haven't prepared in detail, you can generate something that's appropriate from these lists. So, big fan of those. Oh, I need to do an armory too. Actually, I was really happy with the way I got inspired to do the Hell Armory. I initially wasn't going to do one, and then I found as I was developing the lores that there was something both elemental, like in the terms of like classical elements, not classic. These are in Hell. These are monster elements, but like elemental in that sense, and sort of I don't know what you call it. Emotional. Like there was some kind of pathos thing, some kind of emotional thing that was missing, and I wound up using like combining that with some of the animistic aspect of Hell to make the hellish relics. So you can kind of just empower any you know tool or whatever with certain magical powers, and you have to go to particular places in Hell that are like saturated with certain kinds of energies for the certain Ashura. And that kind of helped me flesh those guys out too. Like, what are these guys about? What kind of sin do they represent? And I found some really good ones. So, so yeah, that wound up being very flexible. Like, I feel like you'll be able to do a lot with this, right? Uh, the hellish relics have all kinds of fun little different powers they can have. You can mix and match them, and I feel like again, one of the things that's really important for me in terms of artifacts is that they're something that require you to play the game to get. A lot of times the crafting systems in games is just like, hey, do another side game for a while that only involves your character and nothing else in the party and nothing of relevance to the actual game itself, and then you'll get a giant benefit in game. I don't like that. I want you to go and get the stuff for the artifact. This is something that Exalted did. Like they made you go and get the stuff. And we really kind of came to the same conclusion, me and Exalted. I think third edition has got like you go adventure and then out of that adventure comes the artifact. I wanted that too. I like that idea. It's a good idea. And credit where it's due, Exalted did a good job of kind of figuring that out for them. And I stole it because I did my whole career stealing from Exalted. Oh, goodness. Oh, look, I have a chat. Hey, everybody. I should read these real quick. The actions are super not streamlined. I really did like Legends of the Woolen for, like, play-by-post. I think it really thrived there. So, yeah, that's a good observation of Legends of the Woolen. I actually got hired to work on the truncated, like, super streamlined version of Legends of the Woolen, which just became this system eventually. Sup, Immortal Ryu? Hello. To you as well, my friend. Alright, so, now that I've blabbered about more or less unrelated things, we're going into Steel. So, over the course of the last few months, I've really been busting my chops, and I've made some very cool stuff for this setting. And I got all the Kung Fu done. I actually doubled the amount of Kung Fu I thought I was going to. I got all the different robot paradigms done. I expanded the rules for turning into a city. Like, I really put a lot of effort into making these guys a really rich, playable faction. And I did that because as I continued to kind of work into the Autochthonians, which is what these guys are inspired by, more and more of their setting was like really cool ideas without any idea of how they would connect to like the motives of characters or how they would manifest in a game at all. And this is a perennial problem of Exalted, but it was especially relevant with these guys because their whole thing is being communists, right? They're in a super resource scarce environment, like a living robot god, and there's no sunlight, there's no soil, there's no fresh running water. Like they simply have to make hyper efficient use of everything, right? So everybody toils away in factories to make the robot god happy enough that he like gives them like protein paste to eat, and like boiled flavorless like hot, like coolant water to drink, you know. So that's a compelling notion, right? A place where something like communism or more like slavery to a centralized state is not only like workable in a way that will continue for thousands of years, but is an absolute necessity of the way you have to live your life. And in my initial readings of the book, that's kind of how I looked at it. And then later readings of the book, there is a lot of elements of that, but they really seem like they think that's an ideal society, and that having gruel and working as a slave for your entire life is like great. And it's not. That's a nightmare, right? That's like the worst thing I could imagine is those conditions. Like even like being a slave on Earth, which is, you know, at least you got to live on Earth with like sunlight. These people, they live in a giant prison and they're slaves. Not great, right? And I love that. I love how bleak and dystopian and awful that is, and I love the aesthetics of communism, and I love the robot heroes. There's so much you could do with that, right? But again, the White Wolf writers, they're not the best, at realizing their ideas into games, which is really frustrating because that's literally their entire job, right? They generate really good ideas, and the next step is turn them into games. Well, if you actually take that step seriously, White Wolf sucks, big time. Now, White Wolf is huge, and I can find as many exceptions to that statement as I find things that agree with it. But by and large, especially with their really cool, really unique ideas, Autochthonia being high among them in my estimation, they really screwed the pooch. Um, and it doesn't take as Axe has shown us, it doesn't take as much as you would suspect to make a very vibrant economy as a playable element of a game. Now, I'm not referring to the second edition of Axe, which, there's a lot going on with that game. That is a dense, dense game. But I'm referring to the first edition, that wonderful slender black book, which launched 1,000 nightmarish subsystems for my games. Took a lot of inspiration from those guys, specifically Macrease, who's a fantastic dude overall and a brilliant game designer. There's your plug, Alex. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, anyway. So, let me actually go and brag about what I was able to do a little bit. Uh, oh, this, I'm actually going to add one of these to the earlier sections too. This is the how to create characters. This is just how to create characters from the core book, copy and pasted. I'm going to do a version of this for the robots because it's not clear right now how you make them. A normal character, you choose a clan, and then you choose an archetype, and then you choose your kung fu from your clan's kung fu. It's very easy, right? But these guys don't have archetypes. There's only one kind, and they don't have clans, they have nations. And they also have two different power sets. They have augmentations, which are modifications to their robot frame, and then they have normal-ass kung fu. And these things have significant impacts on how they interact with the world. Like, see harmony right here? Okay. Well, the more you modify your body away from humankind, the more robotic and alien you become. This only increases whenever you get Kung Fu, right? Kung Fu kind of improves the depth and breadth of your soul, and so you get more harmony, and you can modify yourself more without losing that connection with humankind, right? But that means right from the get-go, you're going to have this calculation, right, of balancing between modifying yourself and becoming more of a robot, or learning Kung Fu and becoming more of a Kung Fu legend, like a more human-style legend. And yeah, robots are weird. A thing that I learned very rapidly, looking through the book with the Autochthonians, is that there was just tons of exceptions about how they worked. That was because whenever you make an exalt, even though they're very different from a human being in terms of like power and capability, fundamentally they still do the same stuff, right? They eat, they sleep, they breathe, they mate the same way as human beings, and again, they do so in incredible ways. Like, they can hold their breath for hours or days. They can go days without eating. You know, they can drink molten lava. Like, and when they procreate, like their kids are like super powerful. And, like their gestation periods are much more tame, have much less of an effect on them. They're much shorter. So like all that stuff is like a super powered version of what a human does, but it's still pretty much what you'd expect a person to do. But robots don't breathe. They don't breed. They don't eat. They don't drink. They don't sleep. They don't have skin. They're robots. So whenever you're designing them as a playable character, that kind of invisible rule of it, you can do what a person can do, vanishes, and you have to stipulate. And so White Wolf stipulated in an awkward way that made the robots kind of weird. And I was like, no, I really want the robots to be robots, and I need to stipulate how my particular ones work. Um, and so that's this here. Notice that it's right next to their stats. Again, this is me doing the work that White Wolf failed to do correctly. I also wanted a few other things. Like, one of the things I wanted to make sure I was doing was the Battle Angel Alita thing, where characters could come across a broken robot and fix it. And that's, I don't think that should be an easy resurrection, but I do think that they should be way more resurrectable than like a dead corpse, because they're things, they're robots. So this is the resurrection chart, and this, of course, is inspired by the Dungeons and Dragons "What happens to you when you come back from the dead" charts, which are always miserable and just hilarious. So you want to add that here. Here we go. So I don't have clans, I have nations, and these have been written and rewritten a few times. There's a few things I added in this latest draft. For example, who builds these heroes? This was a part that was missing, and I hadn't even thought of it, which is, okay, so we've got the description of these societies, and we've got their cool robots that they have. Who makes them? Because within the societies of the great clans in the core book, the assumption is that there's just martial brotherhoods, and whenever someone has heroic potential, they get snatched up by one of these brotherhoods and trained in their master's kung fu directly. So there's like a lineal thing going on there. But robots are made by people with access to significant resources in an incredibly resource poor environment. So those people have a political interest, and that's guided by their cultural and philosophical underpinnings. So this wound up being really important, and something I made certain to put in so that there would immediately be some hooks into what your character's motives were. You were made for a purpose. How do you deal with that? So that was really important. Um, I finalized these guys, which I don't know. I kind of got stuck on like the robot that it's like, this is the dude that was in my head, that was brilliantly realized, by the way, by good old Kazuki, my rock star artist. And like, this is the image I had, and he's on the cover too. Um, I was like, this is what I want. I want my robots to be punk rock robots, right? That's what I want to do. I want to do cyberpunk, but even more like diesel and gear punk. That's what I want. This is perfect, right? And I wrote these guys like halfway, and then I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And I had to take a break for like 4 or 5 months just sitting on these dudes. And I finally actually pushed myself to write them. I'm not the biggest fan of this writing. I'm gonna reread it in the not too distant future, and if it makes me cringe too hard, I'll rewrite it. But at least it is something, and I've got the essence of them down here. Melon I just didn't even touch. I didn't know what I was gonna do with them. I kept waffling back and forth between doing like an Ayn Rand Gulch Gulch thing with them and doing like noble knights except robots, which is kind of like a Galaxy Express 3.9 thing. Um, so that's where these guys were stuck between two very different kind of extremes. And I think I found a reasonable way. I erred on the side of knight robots. I think that's a little more universal in its appeal. But I put a little bit of Ayn Rand in them because, capitalism deserves to have its own dystopia. And I actually kind of have two capitalist dystopias here, because these guys are the like Brave New World slash Neuromancer dystopia, and these guys are more of the Ayn Rand slash technology becomes magic dystopia. So you got a couple of different capitalist ones. These guys are the communists slash fascists. I thought, why not just piss everybody off with these guys? And like, look how dark and awful and evil this guy looks. He looks so cool. But yeah, so everybody gets their own dystopia. And then we've got offense. So these took a while, and I'll show you why. I'll show you why. There's actually two reasons that these took a while. No, I need to. I'll be just gonna add art to fix this. I'll buy a little more art from Kazuki. This, because I would love to see like a rusted out robot corpse here or something that fills this up with some nice art. Actually, I'd probably put it over here and just push this over. But yeah, I did the Battle Angel Alita. You can have robot amnesia thing here. You can be rusted or corroded. You can be shell shocked. I was gonna call this PTSD, but I wanted to use the term shell shocked. I just think it's a little more visceral because there's a lot of like, whatever you're, the thing that created the term shell shocked is like shellings in World War One. Like people would go into an industrialized battlefield for the first time in history, and they would come out just psychologically annihilated, and so they were like, I guess they're shell shocked, right? They had to figure out something to call that. And I wanted to make sure that I was bringing the kind of like jarring brutality of industrialized warfare to their aesthetic really hard, because nothing like the horrendous suffering of an entire generation of people to flavor your fucking elf game. Wonderful. Let's see here. Most of this is just a rehash of what the demon guys can do, since they can turn into cities. I had to think. Okay, so I had to think about these a bit. There's a few that I added in here that are specific to them, like synergy. It's not clear. I wanted to clarify the interaction between augmentations and techniques, and this keyword is part of what does that. It shows that sometimes they work together, and generally they don't. Vehicle was one that I had to do a few drafts of. I'm pretty happy with where it landed. For example, like, I didn't initially have health bonuses whenever you turn into a car, and I feel like being bigger should give you more health overall. So, I don't feel like that's an unreasonable addition to the rules. So a lot of this just kind of came from, like, writing the rules down and seeing how they felt and, like, thinking about them consequentially. And I feel like overall these are sophisticated enough that they'll feel right in play. So let's scoot on down a little more. Okay, here we go. So here is why this took me bloody forever. So, let's talk a little bit more about... No, I don't want that. Let's talk a little bit more about... Ooh, that looks nice, actually. I like where that is. Let's talk a little bit more about the first take on the alchemicals, which is the Exalted the Autochthonians. Okay, so in that book, you have a pile of powers that are arranged by vibe, kind of, and they straddle this odd line between a robotic enhancement and a magical power, like a spell you can cast. And individual powers err wildly on either side of that. So, like, there's some that are like, you have jet boosters, and there are some that are like, you, like, summon, like, discus that you produce from, like, essence in your body made of crystal, and you throw them, and then the discus shatters and vanishes. Right? So, like, there's a lot of stuff where it's clear that what they're trying to write around is you tracking things, right? So, like, for example, there's a power you can have where you can generate a weapon from your body, but there's no fuel for this weapon. So, you could see that a player could do something like, well, I'll just generate, like, a hammer, rip it off, generate another one, and then since I have infinity essence because it regenerates, I now have infinity metal ingots, effectively, right? And so the authors have to kind of like awkwardly write what feels like really late into the writing errata, and it just bloats so many of these powers, right? Just to get around players doing stuff like that. Uh, and there's a lot of it, like a lot more than you'd suspect. So the arrangement is clumsy, the aesthetic is awkward, and then the actual writing of the techniques themselves, the charms, I guess they are, it is really needlessly bloated with this hyper clarifying text that you can completely get around, right? So those are problems I absolutely wanted to solve, but I found that some of them are sort of necessary because again, these are robot enhancements, right? They're basically submodules and miniature machines that you put inside your body that have a particular purpose. You know, some of them are enhancements to your more or less humanoid capabilities. This makes you jump higher. This makes you punch harder. This makes you see further. But any of those things, you can't just say because of magic. You can say that you power this with magic, so its physical properties are enhanced. But to retain the aesthetic, it has to be something that is inherently robotic in nature. It has to be mechanical, even if magic is what makes that machine work, right? If that's the fuel that allows it to break physics in the way that it does, right? So that's actually kind of a hard thing to write for because you're constantly stipulating and you're constantly like looking at the physics of something and saying, okay, would this work as I suspect it would? Where does magic need to come in? And is it too magical? Like, even if it's something as simple as, you know, you can make yourself hotter, right? You like have these big iron spikes that jump out of you like dynamos that get hotter, and there's like arcs of electricity that arc between them, right? Okay, if you think about that, right? If you think about that, you have to ask yourself, like, okay, that feels aesthetically right, but does it strain credibility to the point that it's like, you know, does this seem too magical? Like, because what if you take that same thing and you're like, okay, well now it can shoot out beams of energy from the lightning. Like you can like summon like ball lightning and blast people with that. It's like, okay, that still feels pretty robotic and mechanical. And it's like, okay, now you can not just emit heat, but emit like different kinds of radio waves and things like that, and radiation from them. Again, it still feels pretty mechanical. But what if now they can transmute lead to gold because they emit magical wavelengths? And it's like, I mean, right? And you can kind of see how you could sort of creep away from something that feels right aesthetically. Um, so yeah, they were surprisingly challenging to write for. And you'll note, even though I put a lot of effort into keeping them concise, almost all of them wound up bloating just like the White Wolf ones. Like, look at these. These are pretty chunky. Okay, so like here's a good example: is omni-joint calibrators. This is actually something that is almost a direct tribute to a charm in that book, right? It lets your joints move around, and I think there's just something really boring, like increase your dexterity. But I was like, no, I want to do something kind of cool with this. What I had to do, since it wasn't just giving you a flat bonus to something, was I had to stipulate. It's like, okay, so you can twist your joints around or make them completely invert and go in the other direction, all kinds of stuff. And I had to like think of individual actions that would give you that I could use as a here's some things you can always do with this, right? Because I didn't want it to be worthless. I wanted you to be able to look at this and think, oh, that's cool enough that I want to give it a try, right? And so look how fat this gets, right? You can have advantage and you don't gain disadvantage in grabs. You can argue for this in strategic situations. You gain +1 rate to agility actions to maneuver, balance, or traverse an environment where your stunning range of motion could benefit you. This is nearly always, but still at GM discretion. So, like, there's your +1 rank to agility, kind of, right? Because it's still lending itself to you describing what you're doing in a way that you get that bonus. So you kind of can't get out of that unless you're justifying it. I like that. It's not exactly the stunt system from Exalted, but it's kind of angling you in that direction. Well, why would this make it easier? You're trying to run away from somebody. How does your amazing like flexibility help you? And you could like recall like that scene from oh, what was that movie where Jackie Chan is running away from someone and he jumps through a bank teller window, like this little bitty, just like he slides right through it like it's nothing. Like, add that to your description. Suddenly the GM's like, oh yeah, that is awesome. Okay, beautiful, perfect. You know, and I also added a thing where you could twist all your joints around, like complete 180 your head and all your joints, and get the drop on somebody if they thought that they were sneaking up on you. But it only works once, and you can't surprise them again. Um, I think that's really funny, and actually, it's that's a tribute to the power that the Mask of Winters has in Exalted. Ooh, is that first or second edition? I know he has it in first edition. He can just like twist himself completely around, and that's just a thing they let it be known that he can do. So I was like, that's funny. I like that. And I also think that sort of lends itself to like describing what you're doing more cinematically and interestingly. So yeah, I wound up having to concretely codify some things that could do, because if I didn't, there was just nothing to it. It's like, oh, you can twist your joints around. Good luck, right? And it wouldn't be clear. Like, I wouldn't be communicating to GMs or players what the intent of that design was. And if I just gave you that +1 right to agility, why wouldn't you take that? Like, that always benefits you, and it doesn't really indicate why, right? It's just, you're better, whatever. Because the White Wolf way of doing it was that. It was just like, oh, your joints are good, so enjoy your bonus, right? And that was it. They just shrugged and moved on. It really was just an excuse, like the thinnest excuse to give you a bonus to a stat, which is really boring. So, yeah, that wound up taking longer than you suspect. But that's only one of the reasons all this took longer than you suspect. So, in addition to some of them are easy, synthetic limbs and what have you, you'll notice there's a lot of these. Okay, so the kung fu is stratified, right? It's got like a tier. It goes forms, which is the basic thing. There's only one per style, and then you have 6 novice techniques, and then 3 expert level techniques, 3 master level techniques, and then 1 supreme technique. So that's a pretty concise pyramid of powers, right? And even in the core book, I found that I would sometimes struggle to fill those up, because that is actually a lot of individual powers that all need to have a reason to exist, and they can't step on each other's feet. They have to be distinct enough that there's a reason to get any one of them. So that wound up being a lot, because there's 7 clans and 2 kung fu per clan, so it wound up being tons. Now, in the years since then, I've thought of a lot more kung fu, obviously, but with these guys, I was like, well, there's only going to be 3 paradigms. So I can afford, this was my foolishness going into this, I can afford to have a lot of powers in each tier. So I wound up doing, I want to say it was like 9 and 9. So yeah, let me just count on me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so I want to say I might only be 6, but it winds up being a significant amount of these concealable ones, which you can wear underneath your clothes and still kind of get away with just looking like your normal self. And then there's heavy ones, which significantly alter your appearance for the inhuman, right? So let me see how many I got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 of them. So yeah, 9 of both of those per paradigm. Again, there's only 3 paradigms, but that's already 18 distinct powers that a given paradigm has to give you that are accessible from character generation. Those are the ones you can start with. So I also had to think, okay, with the heavy ones, like that's kind of my expert level technique stuff. So I have to design these as though they're expert techniques, which are notoriously difficult to write. Novice level ones are usually easy because they're a small flat bonus. Well, guess what? I couldn't do that with these either. Even the ones that are just, here's a small flat bonus, have a lot of stipulation to them, right? And I also found that the power level of these augmentations wound up being kind of oscillating a little bit between what I'd consider to be something like a novice level technique and something that's a little closer to an expert level technique, because they're not really tiered the same way. These have other balancers that you can that allow you to kind of expand where they can be on the power scale, right? Like some of them are significant installations to a body part. Some of them require ammunition. You know, some of them become very obvious when used. Some of them require fuel, and all of like some of them alter your appearance in significant ways. And so all of a sudden, I had all these things that were counterbalancing the powers that I was allowed to use in the technique, and I had to consider them, right? So these were each one of these was like designing a new gadget, right? Like a new piece of the armory. And I was realizing that I was, as I went into designing them more and more, that that's really what I was doing here. These are the magic items, if you will, of the robots. Is all these cool, nifty devices that they can use and install in their bodies. Like that's kind of the conceit of what you are doing. And then I ran into another problem. I had this one written a while ago. This is the core one. And I know this particular page is going to cause headaches for you GMs. I'm so sorry. This is the everyone has access to it. It turns you into a bigger robot power. And this is how you do Transformers, folks. This right here. Become a big robot, transform into a car. Okay? So if ever you're wondering, this is intended to be used by every robot. Every different, like, there's, I guess there's 4 paradigms. This is the everybody has access to it paradigm. Everyone does this. All the robots do this. I'm going to try to make that clear in the text, but the reality right now is that there's one page that says it, and here it is. And unless you're paying attention and you're like, oh, everybody has access to that, it doesn't dawn on you that that means that there are big robots that turn into cars in every faction, right? So please keep that in mind as you create your setting for your particular game, that you know the Transformers are there. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot going on here. But I had this one done pretty early into the design. I had this one done about a year ago or so, and it only went to here, right? The factory city, and this was kind of like this. This is a very White Wolf cop out kind of way of designing it, where it was like, oh, you're a robot factory, and you know, like you're as big as a factory, and that's fine. That'll be enough. You don't need any more than that. And it actually, for the demon cities, this is enough, right? This is about all that they get, because they all share a core set of rules about how to expand and where your consciousness is within your world body, and like how you can manifest your powers, and they all kind of go back to this. But the robots don't really work like that. They're big modular things, and their individual parts are their powers. So things like the buildings that people live in are an augmentation, right? They require resources and they serve a function, but it's not just a character function, now it's a societal function, right? So when I was thinking about the long game of how to make these guys work, I realized that I would need to describe how to do a city. Here, when I first introduced the idea, and then furthermore, let's scoot on down here, and then furthermore, all of the different robot factions were going to have, in addition to that, their own augmentations when you're at city scale. So yeah, I wound up doing 10 of those per paradigm, aside from the core paradigm, which only really has, yeah, just hab blocks, which is like the most basic one, like, you know, it's places where people live. So this is really simple. For the core one, I'm fine with making it boring. It shouldn't have a lot of flavor. It's the core one. Everybody can make buildings and become a city, right? However, if you're, say, one of these guys and you have authoritarian powers, you need to be able to make a robot police force or a hypnagogic propagandatron. I'm so happy with that phrase, by the way. Or flat cannons, or the torment nexus. Okay, I went a little goofy with that one. You need a gulag process. Flesh processing center. I love this one so much. It's so funny. But yeah, so I had to think about what buildings were necessary for these different societies. How did they function? And what does that mean for the lores? So that's what's bringing us to the writing today. Wait a second, I need this protein. So, this is why I got stuck on these for so long. Because you can see each one of these powers, each one is its own thing, right? They need they have a lot more words than if you look at the comparable ones in the core book. Let me actually just pull up some comparable powers. God, this is a big book. I went really hard for you guys. I just want you to know. Like, see, and you can see with these, like, individual powers, like, they're stat boosts, right? Their function is in here, so you don't really need a whole lot going on here in every single power. This is enough, right? Their game function. And when you go into the Kung Fu later on, you can see that I'm doing that again. Let me actually scoot down to the Kung Fu, because I did a lot of good Kung Fu here. Oh my god, there's so much. Guys, I wrote so many robot powers. Look at this. This is available to all you wonderful backers, by the way, and anyone who gives me $2 a month on Patreon. It's my plug. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Alright, so here's the Kung Fu, and you can see these fit very cleanly onto 4 pieces of paper, right? Even the really complicated powers aren't really that complicated, right? A couple of clean little, you know, paragraphs, really short to the point. And some of these are, you know, these are some of the longer ones. Let me show you what these are comparing to. Where are we going here? Here we go. King of Boundless Stone. Okay, so if you look at like Dirt and Stone Command, this is one of the longer ones, right? Most of the elemental control powers are very long like that, right? They have a lot of, you know, stipulations and weirdnesses about how they work. Oh, excuse me. And so that's what these are, just different elements, right? So they can be a little bit longer, but for the most part, the powers are pretty short. You know, you get a benefit. Look at that. Like that is a return to form for me. These also took a little while longer than I wanted them to, mostly because I just wasn't happy with how few Kung Fu they had. I had 3 different styles that I felt really reflected well on the like tactical doctrine that would be adopted by these societies, but they only had 1 Kung Fu each as a result of that, and I was like, this just doesn't feel like enough. So I struck on the idea of giving them styles from the core book that are generic enough, like weapon styles that didn't have a lot of like outside elemental flavor or anything like that. And I was only able to find 2. The spear style and the hammer style were generic enough, right? The sword style was too holy to make sense, and then like uh, the staff style had all this like growing plant stuff that was really dissonant aesthetically. So I was like, okay, well, that limits what I can do significantly. And of course, the unarmed styles are all things like you can shoot demon energy or you can blow people's heads up with pressure point attacks. And I was like, okay, there's no way they had that Kung Fu. So I was very limited what I could use from the core book. So that kind of petered out. And I was like, in the depths of my despair, at some point last month, I realized that I hadn't done Kung Fu styles for the alchemical elements. And so there were 3, I boiled it down to 3 that were appropriate for them, right? Because obviously they have stuff like water. So I was like, okay, I will do plasma, which is like their version of fire. And so that wound up going through some iterations and being really cool. Oil, which I thought was a very compelling element to have magical power over. And then metal. And my first version of metal was like Cutman, where it was like you could make weapons and armor, and you'd be really good at cutting through metal. And then I don't even these aren't even complete styles, right? They only go up to 1 master level, so they have considerably less kung fu. Like as far as like the top tiers compared to the core book kung fu, right? That's part of their design. They have a lower power tier overall with kung fu, but they make up for it by being able to turn into tanks. You know, that's a pretty good trade-off, right? But I found that even with that truncated amount of demand for like individual techniques, I didn't have enough ideas to make that work. So I just kind of bashed my head against the wall until I out of frustration, watched the second Deadpool movie, and there's a scene where Juggernaut fights Colossus, and it was a metal guy versus a metal guy, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Thank you, divine lords of beat sticking. And so yeah, I did Iron Juggernaut style, just in case you're wondering what inspired that. And it's all power moves and punching through tanks. Yeah, tank peeling chop, virtue of the vice. I'm very happy with that one. Charge of the Iron Juggernaut, blue steel invective, fortress shattering fist. Yeah, straightforward, cool, and the unique tactical niche that I haven't really covered before. So there you go. So anyway, without further ado, here we are in the bestiary. Gosh, it really, and this surprised me when I came back to it. That's all I have written for it so far. I thought I had more ideas. I really thought I did. And in the abstract, I think it's easy to be like, oh man, it'll be so easy to come up with ideas for bad guy robots. So here's the problem I ran into very rapidly, right? So you can do an evolutionary paradigm and riff off that with a normal bestiary. Can't do that with robots. They're all artificial, right? They might have had an evolutionary paradigm of competing robots, but they still have an origin, right? They were still an initial template. And that evolution itself is part of the departure from that template, right? Like that would be their thing. Like that's the thing of a given. If a robot can evolve, that's the robot's thing, because robots can't usually do that, right? So you can do one or maybe two or three max types of evolving robot, but very rapidly you'll find that you're turning it all into what I call black goo. Black goo sucks. It shows up everywhere, from Prometheus to that one Superman movie, and it's just a robot which is a bunch of nanomachines, and it's like shapeless black goo, and it can do anything and it can be anything. And the way that writers always write that is it's a big pile of weird fuzzy goo, and it's lame. You can't punch it, and you can't fight with it in any meaningful way, and it's you can't do stunts on it because it doesn't have any, like, despite the fact it has mass, you can't get leverage on it because it's basically water. So it's just lame. It sucks. So you can't do too much of it's an evolution monster, right? You can do, I'm fine with one black goo. You can have one, okay? Dungeons and Dragons. You can't do multiple colors. You get one, okay? You get the black goo. It's lame, but okay. You can do it once. That's at least a classically established bad guy robot trope. Fine, great. Evolving robot, maybe two. You've already got the black goo thing, right? Which is kind of like the apex of being able to adjust to any situation, right? So this would be like a hard robot that can like put different robot parts on its body, right? Or otherwise like manifest new hard robot things like guns or gears or like limbs or like, pinchers. Or you could have like a soft robot, which is like a biomechanical thing, probably insectile, and then it can like enter like a pupa stage and then like emerge from a chrysalis, and now it's a different thing. Those are the other kinds of evolving robot you can have, okay? But notice that evolving is their thing, right? You're kind of in the same place with the robot bad guys that you're in with the kung fu powers, right? We're not the augmentation powers. They're all a particular thing, They have a particular niche. They're made for a particular reason because they're artificial. They're designed to do something, right? So I had to do the same thing with them. I had to think, okay, what does this kind of robot do? And again, you find that if you're just doing, it's a bad guy robot, but it's this color. It's a bad guy robot, but it's this size. It's a bad guy robot, but it has this little gimmick. You're not really doing justice to the potential of the premise of a bad guy robot, right? The way you actually do justice to that premise is you do what would be the monster of it's a bad guy robot science fiction horror film, right? And you can do that in an existential way with like the Borg. I think that's a really I put something like the Borg in here. That's a really compelling bad guy that's mostly just a robot that takes over your mind and makes you a hive mind. Right? That's fine. You know, or you can do it like I said with like the evolving like alien-esque robot. You could do something like Rosian Z, where you have a robot that is made up of different chunks of other robots and can evolve and adapt. Uh, so like you could do individual like science fiction bad guy robots, and each one of them is like taking that one of those premises and turning it into a monster. Right now, you're finally doing justice to the idea of bad guy robot. But again, but again, once I actually started asking myself, okay, how many of those very big, very good, very rich ideas do I actually have, and why would they exist in this setting? I rapidly cut out tons of them, right? Because a lot of robot horror stories are just kind of the same story over and over. They all kind of go back to the Golem of Prague. Like, I hate to be that guy, but that's like 99% of evil robot stories, right? Even the ones that aren't robots, like your Dr. Frankenstein and his monster kind of thing, that's still pretty much the Golem of Prague, right? Like, that's more or less what that is. And then if you put that in like the 1940s and 50s, brain in a big robot body. I know the Simpsons did a riff on that, but I assume there's some actual time that was done in like a somewhat more legitimate form. But like if you do that, that's still the Golem of Prague again. You're just doing that again. So like tons of robots. It's just that over and over again. We've made its powerful robot in the shape of a man, and it can do whatever we need it to. It's the perfect slave. Oh no, it's rebelled for some reason, and it's killing us. Like, man, they do that a lot. So if you're putting that in a bestiary, you can do that once. If you're actually like taking the, you know, take the premise and do it as best as you can seriously, if you're taking the conservation of design seriously, you can do that once. One time. And that covers like tons and tons of horrible robot stories. And there's not many, right? You have AI that's grown out of control, right? You have the Golem of Prague. You have Black Goo. You know, like you have robot that's evolved beyond its initial purpose. You have robot made by an alien that you can't understand. You know, robot that thinks it's a person. On and on. You got the Terminator. You know, again, you've got like this. You're looking at what I've got here, and like I could tell you, each one of these things is either one of those ideas, right? Or it's just me kind of just racking my brain. Like, what do I have? What else is there? You know, broken machine god. Okay, good. There's machine gods. Some of them are broke. Mad god AI. Okay, that's just Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Normal machine god. Well, obviously they would have non-broken versions. There we go. Lambda Geon. That's it's just the Borg. What do we got here? Imperfect copy. That's from which Terminator movie was that? Where there was like a guy that thought he was a dude, but he was a robot. I can't remember what that was. Dark. It's not Dark Fate. Hell, it's the one with Christian Bale in it. Help me out here, chat. Who is that? Everyone's getting bored of watching me do this. Oh, hey, Alexander. I'm gonna go to chat for a minute while I try to remember the name of this movie. Gosh, what was it? Judgment Day was the second one. Dawn of the Machines was the third one. I think it was the fourth one. It was anyway. It's that one I'm thinking about. That's not a particularly new idea. I'm a robot, but I think I'm a person. Oh no, crisis! Where animal men hid in the depths of the robot planet. I mean, it's kind of that. I'm gonna be honest with you. The Origin of Robot Society, if you actually read it, is legitimately just some dudes who made robots somewhere far away, and then they built some more. Yeah, that's more or less it. Again, because there's not a lot of origin stories either. You actually start digging into mythology, you realize there's like maybe 12 stories, and it's like, oh man, ooh, I got a whole game to write. I better start getting creative. I miss when Adventure Time was good. It didn't last long, but it was great. All right, what is the simpler that a robot character can be? Could I be a brave little toaster? Minimum is person. You can the minimum robot simplicity is person, and I think that even that's really not doing as much justice to the premise as I could. I've previously had people that have wanted to be everything from robots that turn into tanks to a literal a disc that you would put inside of different robot bodies that you'd find where you could pilot them. So like free floating AI and stuff like that would be really interesting. But I think at the end of the day, you have to have something that you can grapple with enough that it's like kind of like a person. So person is my minimum. That's my floor. That's where I drew my line with this one. Start as a toaster, upgrade to humanoid lone wolf fist. I'm fine with. I used to be a robot brain in a jar, right? I'm fine with that. I think that's reasonable. At the time that you start playing, you should be a person. Like that's a starting character as a person. But if you actually want to like kind of pull apart the lore a little bit, technically you are the robot brain and the spine with the chakra. That's the actual minimum viable robot for sentience in terms of one that has the capacity, like a human soul, to learn kung fu, right? In other words, something that's worthy of being a player character. That's your minimum viable playable character, right? So if you really did like talk your GM into it, you could just be that wadded up inside a steel box that can like shake around a little bit. And there's your brave little toaster, right? You wouldn't like that's technically not in the rules, but I mean it's allowable within the setting. So go nuts. I'm not here to yuck your yum, buddy. Uh, Hello, amused Crane. Salvation. Thank you, Crane. Dear Lord. Oh man, that was driving me crazy. Anyway, that's what that guy is. So yeah, that's what I've got next in terms of like where things are sitting here. This one, the Rusalka here, I straight up stole. That is, I even stole the name. That's from Axiom Verge. Those things are amazing. I wonder if I have any images I can find. I love them so much. Yeah, there they are. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? It's just a giant lady face in a bunch of weird robot tendrils. Oh, so good. I think yeah, even on the cover of the game, there's one of them. They're so great. And then there's like the fan art where you're like riding on top of like the giant head. This is so good. It's the ones where their bodies are just floating around. There's this lady, she's great. So it's that. It's one of these. And at the end of that game, whenever you actually see one in their giant monster robot body, it's like, yeah, it's crazy. It's just absolutely goofy how huge and powerful these things are. I love them, and I love Axiom Verge, and you should definitely spend the probably $5 that it is to go play it immediately. It's fantastic. There we go. But yeah, and that okay. So Rusalka, that's one of those things where it's like ancient living god weapon that has kind of gone into retirement. That's a pretty unusual idea, right? So I had to steal that one. Like I had to. Uh, Altered Gods, those guys there. There's a comic called We Three, with the number 3, and it's done by it's one of my favorite writers, Grant Morrison. And that's what these guys are. Even if you look at the art, I directly had the artist reference the We Three design. So you got cat, rabbit, and dog. I think is the 3 ones that are in that one, and they have like a robot body. And I wanted him to combine that with like a Hindu god, but made of robot. And you know what? He knocked it out the ballpark. It's exactly what I asked for. But I was interested in what happened to the ancient fleshy gods whenever their world became a robot, like in the blink of an eye. Uh, this design is, again, largely lifted from Blame. There's a weird servitor monster in there in the far reaches that it looks just like more or less like this. And I love the idea of robots that had some kind of ancient purpose that have had to adapt and change over time. To whatever their purpose has grown into in the alien and inhuman reaches of this distant and impossible industrial hellscape. Um, I've got these guys. These are the Hollow Men from the poem. and they really are just like little robot shells that are, more or less are people. They're not really people, but they're kind of like designed to interact with human beings, so they're people-ish. There's my lovely Rusalka. You can definitely see, uh, I just gave the art. I think I just gave the artist. Yeah, where is she? I think I actually gave him all the different ones. Yeah, I just gave him this lady, and I was like, okay, here are the three ladies in question. They're giant robot heads, basically, and eventually they get big centipede bodies. And make me this, make me some version of this. And again, to his credit, look at that. It's just gorgeous, you know. But I don't have many ideas. So what I've been thinking of with coming back to this, because I wrote this down forever ago. This is like really old writing, and those are the difficulties I came into with it. And I'm thinking now that I've had a chance to kind of like let the concept of this particular world's details breathe a little bit. I've actually gone back and I've rewritten some of the earlier fluff. Let me scoot back there. I think I might have alluded to this earlier. Jeez, I wrote a lot. Man, I'm just crazy. I'm absolutely insane. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So these two, and I like the way this is written, by the way, in these like almost like stanzas. This is so much more digestible than the White Wolf version, where it's just these blobs that go on for pages and don't this meander and don't have any real point. These are great. These are real specific. They have these wonderful clean headers, and they're completely contained in single paragraphs, or not paragraphs, but like single columns. Um, the writing is super sharp on these comparatively. I'm really happy with them. But these two, the Starving and Clockwork Darkness and Divine Schema, are two things that I added a little later on when I got to kind of thinking about the history of the world and how it worked. And the Starving and Clockwork Darkness thing is about how they get incredibly limited resources because, as I alluded to earlier, or was outright stated earlier, White Wolf doesn't have any concept of resource tracking. They hate it for whatever reason. But I don't. I'm fine with that. I track like how much food that a society has and how much food they need, right? And it's not hard. It's a couple of different numbers that you track. It's not some super complicated thing, or at least it's not in the way I characterized it. So I wanted to make sure that that was something that you would have to do as a hero. You'd have to go outside of the range of the cities where it's safe and there's some food to find something that would have resources. So there's two different ones. There's conduits and factory cathedrals. And conduits are veins, the big pipes that move the different elemental resources through Marduk's body. That's the machine god himself is Marduk. And you can tap into those and you siphon off those resources, but they're finite, right? Because he's a closed system. So what he does is once he runs low enough, he just sends his tendrils out. And these are also in the bestiary, by the way. He sends these tendrils with the giant drills on them, and he just shoots them into the ground, and he just drills and sucks up whatever resources are there. Or in other cases, like if he needs something that's a little more like top surface stuff, like if he wants like wood resources, he'll just hoover it up like a vacuum cleaner and just suck up these huge forests, leave just devastation in his wake, and just suck it into his giant super planet body, which means that in the world of Lone Wolf Fist, like whenever this giant robot floating island comes above you, it's a catastrophe because these tendrils come down and destroy everything, and they just leave this polluted hellscape. So the people inside of Marduk do not know that this is happening. They're just like, oh, conduit. Well, we need the stuff in the conduits. We'll tap those. So they don't understand that what they're doing is having this second and third order effect that is just catastrophic in scale. So I love that, first of all. And it really helps with my incredulity of Autothonia as a setting, because they just melt down their dead and feed them back to their living, and that is a cycle that could not continue very long. You need to be able to grow new food, right? So there's hydroponics and things like that in my version, so they can make food, so they're not just eating a rapidly dwindling population. Like that, there's no way that would work for 5,000 years. Like it doesn't work. Like run the numbers, man. You can only eat the dead for so long. People don't age and die quickly enough that even if you were 100% efficient in eating every atom of them, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just your population would collapse within a couple generations at the very, very most. It'd probably collapse in a couple of years. It's just that's not sustainable. And they're like, oh no, we have infinite protein paste. No, you don't. That's stupid. So the conduits are just the big pipes, and that's the thing in the compass of autochthonia is you can tap the different pipes you find, and there's a chance that something good's to them, but there's also a chance that they shoot liquid plasma at you and everyone dies. And I love that. I love that you don't know what's in it until you spike it and find out. Um, so that's there's a little chart for it. It's charming. So I loved that, and I put it right here. And then the places where the the elemental stores are kept is also very different. So in the Autochthonian one, you have these elemental poles of things like steam or electricity or crystal or metal and oil and like all those things. And like that's where there's these giant like landscapes of these things. There's like this huge ocean of oil on top question mark of this spheroid, right? And like on the bottom there's a bunch of waste, the elemental pull of smog, and then there's these two big cylinders. One of them's filled with compressed steam, and one of them's filled with arcs of electricity. And that's so boring. Like I couldn't imagine adventuring through Autochthonia and coming across this gigantic like pillar, like the size of an entire nation, and I'm like, oh my god, what's in here? And I open it up, and a bunch of steam comes out, and I go inside, and it's a bunch of steam, and that's all that's here. Like, why would I go in there? What's in there aside from boiled water? It's not very interesting. Even the electricity one, which is admittedly cooler conceptually, so I go inside and there's a bunch of lightning. Okay, well I can survive that because I'm a cool robot guy, but like, why? Is there something producing the lightning that I could take and bring back to my starving city? No? Okay, why am I here? Right? There's no call to adventure to these places. They have this giant upside down ocean of oil, which is an incredibly cool idea, and there's nothing in it. Right? There's just a bunch of oil and weird robots, but why would you be there? Right? You don't have a motivation that would lead you to go to this place. There's nothing there, right? If you needed a bunch of oil, you could just tap the bottom of it and siphon out an effectively infinite supply. So you don't ever adventure in the ocean of oil. It's so frustrating. So for me, I made factory cathedrals. Individual cathedrals are like strongholds that guard big repositories of these elemental resources. So now each one of those piles of resources, like a treasure trove of resources, has a dungeon around it that you'd have to go through, you know, because you're motivated to get the stuff inside. So this I was really happy with. And I added those a little later in the design, and I think these are going to be important for doing the lores, and I think the bestiary too. I think I just kind of assumed that I think actually, yeah, here we go. These things have things that guard them. Yeah, the machine god's lifeblood. They are always protected by a guardian machine of horrifying power. Those wishing to claim their hordes must slay the clockwork dragons that covet them. Right there, clockwork dragon. Okay, that's pretty unusual. I could put it. That's a couple new bestiary entries. Hell, now that I'm thinking about it, I could do one for each element. I could do the plasma dragon. I could do an oil dragon. I could do a boiled water dragon. Steam is stupid. maybe I won't do a steam dragon. I could do a clockwork dragon though. Why not? The metal one for a big pile of metal resources, right? That's great. Just do that. Gosh, and I think that over here in the divine schema, another thing that was a problem with Exalted as a general setting, but like specifically with Autochthonia is that, okay, it's not spirits exist in two worlds in Exalted, right? They exist in like the magical, ghostly realm of spirits, and they can also physically manifest and be part of like the muddy world of humankind, right? I'm more or less okay with that. I think that that kind of harkens back a little deeper into myth, so I think that divide kind of makes an intuitive sense to us, right? Um, when we start treating it like parallel dimensions that can kind of interact, I think it's a little wonky. Like if you look at the ghost rules in Dungeons and Dragons Third Edition and beyond, it starts to get a little science fictiony in a way that's less intuitive and a little too mechanical for my taste. But in general, being able to turn into a ghost and have like a subtle effect on the world, that's pretty well trod ground, right? Oh goodness. Sorry, I'm a little dehydrated. Notice I have two different drinks here. This is how much I talk. Okay, so the problem with that in the robot, um, so if you're in a big robot, right? You're in a big robot god that's made filled with robot parts and what have you. It's very tonally dissonant to be a ghost. That doesn't fly, man. You could be AI, you could be a consciousness that's lost connection with a physical form that's like you could be a ghost in the machine, in that way. But again, ghost here is a metaphor for that like self-aware spark of consciousness, which like there's something almost electronic about that. The most I would want you to be able to do inside of a robot is do like a Tron thing, where like your consciousness turns to like a digitized version. I'm okay with that, but like literally becoming immaterial like a ghost is a little awkward. Like it's dissonant, right? But the gods could do that, like the machine gods, which you would naturally want to be big, hulking, lumbering robots, right? With like or like weird, sophisticated AI networks. Like when you think about a machine god, I think about like the swarming robot consciousness of the Matrix, right? Or the howling artificial lunacy and weird miracles of Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Like when I think robot god, I think big clunky robot or crazy AI or something tangible, right? Something that's a little less magical and a little more like we've made like a Tower of Babel scenario, right? Where we are an Icarus scenario where we've gone way too close to the divine with the mechanical and the results are disastrous, right? Again, we got a little bit of the Golem of Prague in that too. That is such a foundational myth. Like, again, it's one of those things, um, which is one of the reasons I've credited it in here because every single time I started to go through the tap roots of things, I was like, okay, well, it's all the Golem of Prague. Okay, fair enough. I guess we definitely learned the lesson on that one. And then, of course, we keep doing it over and over, so maybe we didn't. But my point is that it feels weird for a big lumbering robot god to be like a ghost sometimes. Like that's just bizarre. So I got rid of that shit immediately. I was like, no, 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 no. It's all big lumbering robots. That's all there is to it. Um, yeah, 7 robot gods for the 7 elements coursing through them. So the 7 artificial elements that exist are compressed air, divine gold, protein sludge, electric plasma, steam, molten metal, and lubricating oil. And they're roughly analogous to the 7 ones that I have in the core book, right? Um, yeah. Let's see. Where am I going with this? Yeah, here we go. The gods created servants to perform the task of terraforming Amar Utu into Babil Kiminar, massive primordial robots of legendary power, such as the Titanic Rusalka and the stone-chewing tendrils that converted the raw island into a mechanical megaship. Here we go. They created servitors. All right, so this is kind of me talking about what I'm gonna write um, in the um, in the bestiary. So right here, there's a simple schema of 7 robot gods that create the kind of primordial Titanic servants. The Rusalka are among those. And then they make servitors, which are able to kind of adapt the many different tasks that are going to be necessary to make this giant robot work. Um, their world was reoriented around humans dealing with human nature and running out of resources because like their humans aren't robots, and of course they're not going to act like robots. Uh, so the dark miracle called the maiming is whenever the godhead was like, okay, wait a minute. So the humans are dividing off into factions and hoarding resources way past what I allotted to them so that they can start wars with each other, and they're battling each other, which is screwing up all of my calculations for their populations. So like they've totally gone off the divine plan. So we're running out of stuff. The ship is gonna crash and we're all gonna die. So he takes the tendrils, gets more resources, and he's like, okay, we have to separate humankind even further. One big city was a terrible idea. So they literally like rearrange and like randomly scatter them. And what is, I'm now realizing, kind of a Tower of Babel thing. So, oops. Accidentally made a lot of mythological sense there. Um, but that's whenever the factory cathedrals became necessary because the robots realized that if humans had free access to all the resources, this was just going to happen again. So they put them in factory cathedrals, and they're like, nope, these are ours. They have a divine purpose. Stay out, or we'll kill you. And so there's a far more hostile relationship between the mechanical divinity and humankind now, which I love. Because I mean, obviously they have different ways of prioritizing things. It's weird because the robots do ultimately serve humankind, but they can't serve the emergent destiny of humans who aren't happy with the status quo. So I really like that friction. I think there's a lot you can do there. Man, I've got to put all this into the lores. You see what I mean? Like this is rich stuff. These two little paragraphs, these two little additions gave me so much to work with, and they solve so many problems that were in the source material, or the inspirational material. It's not really the source material; it's the inspirational material. Let's see. Yeah, so in here, this last part, I just make it alien and dangerous because there's no way that all of that remained relevant forever, right? Humans are just too hard to predict, and some of the stuff changed and started serving new masters, and some of the robot gods got a little too uppity. So like all of this last little bit is just saying, okay, so all that is like the origin of these things, and so here's some concrete elements of that. But also, there's even weirder stuff out there, and I love that. So this is giving me license to make some truly bizarre stuff, and I really don't want. I really don't want to have a boring ass map like the alchemicals did. The map of Autochthonia, like I said, had it was too comprehensible, right? It was two big pillars, which are the elemental this and that, and then there was the big ocean of oil. There's no reason to go to, and then there was a bunch of gears, and it was like in the middle there's a big orb that's like, oh, this is the crystal chamber where the secret robot magic masters are, and it's like, okay, all right, gonna keep it a whole buck with you, Chief. That's lame. It's too understandable, and there's too little reason to go to any of it, right? I want the same kind of vibe that game Naissance gives you, where as you wander through this giant, impossible city, like squeezing through these inhumanly weird and tight areas and then opening up these massive vistas, like you get the feeling that you're just in this place that not only are you not really supposed to be, but no one's supposed to be there. Like you're in a completely alien place with its own laws, and it's abandoned now. Like whatever it existed for, its original creators left. Just the vastness of it, the enormity of it, the alienness of it. That's what I want whenever you start crawling into the ductwork of this robot setting. I don't want it to be some like comprehensible thing. I want it to be echoing Clockwork Darkness. That's what I want. Mm. That can be kind of hard, and it's one of the things about the well, it's going to be challenging, is that I can say that I want it to be big and mysterious all I want. That's not concrete enough to run at your table, right? At one point, you have to put something in there, and I have a finite amount of something I could ever put in there. So it's a little frustrating for me because even if I wrote 100 pages of lores, it would never be enough to satisfy the vastness of not ever knowing what was next and still having enough cohesiveness that it felt like the same setting. But if you don't dream big, you just can't do anything. So that's where we are right now. I wanted to go and look through those again to remind myself of what I'd already written. So there's 7 elemental gods, huh? And there's servitors, which we've done a version of. There's the tendrils. There's the Rusalka. And then there's a bunch of weird stuff. Okay, let's look at the chat again here. Oh, goodness. Axiom Verge is super cool. Yeah, here we go. Let me catch up on chat. Toaster's question was mostly to know, what is the base, since the term robot does come with a lot of shapes and sizes, human-sized, and looking sounds fine. Yeah, and it gets bigger and weirder from there. Like, I'm 100% committed to you can play a tank. That's a thing you can do. So, Axiom Verge is amazing. Yes, great. Sly Blue Demon, hey buddy, good to see you. Alright, Muse Crane, yes, hello. Alexandra MT2, remind me, what happens to mix acid and steel with normal lone wolf fists? Does the god crash lands into the world and send forward smaller bits to find resources to fix himself? Yep, that's what happens. Anytime you want to introduce this setting to the acid and steel world, just have the big robot island fly over your current setting and have it shoot some tendrils down and destroy a couple of hexes worth of stuff, and you basically get what was it called? The big floating city from Battle Angel Alita. Zon? Yeah, Zon. You basically get Zon. If you want to run up the tendrils, you got to dodge the the razors. But you're a lone wolf fist. You could bike up it. It's fine. And then you can just go right up into the robot world and start causing havoc because that's what the game's about. So yeah, that's the idea. I just keep thinking of Blame. Yes, good. That's accurate. That's what I want you to be thinking about. I love Blame. It's a huge inspiration for this. Steam would be cool if it could obscure the area like fog. Yes, and there's robot powers that do that. So, yes, I agree with you. It's also cursed because the steam is also hot. Yes, true. It's scaldingly hot. You need 2 drinks so you don't have to get up again. Exactly. Well, I will have to get up to pee eventually. That'll be the end of the stream. I unfortunately did not get my pee jug, and I'm not subtle enough to pee on camera without getting caught and banned, so we are going to have to stop that whenever my old man bladder reaches its capacity. I'm somewhere at the 1/3 mark. We're good right now. Ugh. But just in case you were wondering how much I needed to pee, that's, pressing news. What would happen if the robots or the humans managed to wipe the other side out? I don't know. You'll have to find out at your table, buddy. It's all up to you. I hope they wind up dating each other. I've tried to hint at that in the art, that they're just going to date. I think that's beautiful. So, recap over. Time for work. Yeah, part of this recap was to get my brain where it needs to be for this. I'm going to be writing this probably for my whole weekend and for the rest of the week. I'd really like to have it done by the end of the week, which means a significant amount of writing today and tomorrow for it. I'll have to take a little bit of time off because I got a Call of Cthulhu game I'm going to be running, and I got to prep for that a little bit. That one's going to be fun. It's a Magnus Archives game. So the benefit of Magnus Archives is that there's no shortage of material. The drawback is that you are expected to do Magnus Archives, so I got to work on my North accent so I can get Tim right. I don't know if the rest of you are huge nerds of Magnus Archives, but man, I am. I love that show. Let's see here. Goodness gracious. But yeah, recap over. Let's dig down and see where we're at right now. I'm generally pretty happy with what's in the bestiary right now. Let me see. Do I want to add anything to this? Because I'd like to think about the different. Yeah, let's do that. Let's kill this because we're no longer obstructing ourselves from it, and let's add a little bit to the end here. There's 2 things I want to add. First of all, elemental robots. I want some elemental robots. So we'll get the elements and we'll just brainstorm some ideas. Let's see here. I think I only actually wrote the robot elements down once. I think this is it. And you'd think I would have written them down again. No. So I want to make sure I'm making those a little more present within the text. And the best way to make something present within a text is to repeat it and to cite it. You do those two things, then it'll have a bigger impact within the text itself. So here we go. Divine Gold should be pretty unusual. I don't know that I'm going to do any robots that have Divine Gold power. Okay. Molten Metal. Boop. That's lovely. I skipped lunch. Or rather, I ate my lunch extremely early because I go to work at like 4 o'clock. And so I'm a little hungry right now, but I'm on a pretty strict diet. So I made myself a delicious protein shake. Okay, so I definitely want unique robots for the different elemental temples, right? Um, and I think I can probably do this in a way where I'm following kind of a general template, and I still get um, a lot of like traction out of it. Uh, I don't think these should be strictly for these factory cathedrals, but they should definitely show up in the factory cathedrals, right? If you go to the compressed air factory cathedral, there should be a real like air energy. There should be like flying robots, right? So what I'd like to do is, gosh, do I want to do like dragons? I feel like I'm definitely stepping on Exalted's toes if I'm literally doing dragons. So instead of doing just dragons, what I'm going to do is, oh gosh, do I want to do titans? That might be a little bit much. Well, okay, I'll do something big that is like a monster, like a dragon, like slash Leviathan Titan thing. I won't make them as powerful as Titans. Probably that's a little bit much to be just lurking around. Um, but I'll have something big that kind of fills the dragon role, and then I'll have, and I'm definitely wanting to have like kind of everyday like grunts that are like just the thing that you encounter pretty consistently. And I want to do like maybe one other thing. So I'm going to go with dragon and grunt, and then weird third optional thing if something inspires me, right? So I think that gives us a lot to work with, especially because they don't have to be wed to these factory cathedrals and their elements. They can just show up the hell wherever, which just kind of expands the bestiary in a nice way. And I don't think I'm going to have to do a lot mechanically with these guys, right? They're all going to be kind of pretty close to one another in terms of power and capabilities, with just enough uniqueness that within their environment they stand out. So strategically, they have like their own thing that they do. Like the flying robots could like maybe have like some kind of sonic based weaponry, or I don't know, maybe they shoot you with compressed steam. Kind of like that suggestion where the steam obscures what you can see and burns you. That's fun. All right, so we're gonna go with yeah, I'm just gonna go with dragon, grunt, and special. I don't feel like thinking too much about this. This isn't what's going to find its way into the end text. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I think we're just going to go... Yeah, let me actually do it this way. Here we go. Oh, we got lots of room here. We got lots of room. Okay, so let's just... Protein sludge ones are going to be black goo. I just know it. I'm so mad at myself. You know what? I'm going to promise myself right now that I'm not doing black goo with them. I'm not going to do goop monster. They're just going to be something way cooler than that. I don't even care. We'll figure it out, man. We will figure that out. But yeah, right now, already just going with the elements and stuff that would make for a reasonably compelling adventure in a dungeon filled with that element. Already, I've got a massive increase in yeah, and stuff to add to the bestiary. So I had 7 gods total described in the text. I don't really want to name them. What I'd prefer to do is a generic... Yeah, I think I'll just do the generic machine god and the broken machine god. And we could actually probably just go to the kind of generic gods we had in here. As I recall, I had like, oh, what is it? I had like toxic gods. Yeah, here we go. Animal men. Where did I put those guys? I have some really cool monsters in here. Beto Beto. Black bees. Let's see. There's the pretender gods, the Div, who aren't actual gods, but they pretend. I like that they don't even know. Look, they don't know what they are exactly. Oh, wow, there's a lot going on with them despite the fact they don't know their own history. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Half-Life God. I think these are the guys. Yeah, here we go. They have the Divine Decree, Divine Aegis, Divine Weapon, and Avatar form. So they have a really cool panoply of powers. Did I have normal healthy gods anywhere? Or was it just these monster ones? Let's find out. Hellworm, Mahamiraj. It's been a long time since I went through this bestiary. This is me actually working, by the way, finally. So, hope you guys are enjoying it. Oh, goodness. Would you write more if I bribed you with karma? Technically, there was a brief window of time when I would write more if you bribed me with money. But the Kickstarter has now passed, and that window was closed. For now. I'm always gonna write for money. So, first time chat. Predatory Compost? Best viewers. I think this guy is probably spam. Cyclops. You could make them Cyclops. Ooh, yeah. There we go. Cyclopes. Artificial. Oh yeah, we're gonna have to do some Cyclops. That's giant Cyclops robot is brilliant. Yeah, we gotta throw that in. Yeah, I-beam elements. Yeah, there you go. Now you're cooking with, well, plasma beams. Yep, giants wielding weapons made of the element. The compressed air giants just have giant air horns and they're influencers. Can I have the idea of something like the cleaners from the Project Moon games? I never played the Project Moon games. I can look that up. Alright, well, let's look it up. You can suggest it. Let's see what it looks like. I swear to God, if this is Rule 34, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find you. It's not looking good for the Rule 34 thing. Sweepers? Is that what we're talking about? Oh, what are you? What are you, little man? Oh, okay, cool. All right, yeah. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that's great. I'm okay with these. This almost looks like a human cult. I would like to do... Oh, you know what? Actually, we got to put that in. We got to put human cultists in here. Yeah, let's just put in human machine cultists. And we'll just leave it at that. I'm sure I could make that into something really cool. Yeah, there you go. People that have come to worship the strange robot gods far from the light of human cities. That's beautiful. We gotta put that. Okay, that's a great suggestion. I love that. Just the weird technobiological horrors that are unleashed in random intervals to clean the god and keep it clean of broken bots, dead biomass, everything in between. That's Servitors. They kind of do that. Yep. Well, apparently Project Moon rules. They have great design. Okay. Well, there you go. That's a good point. I've busted through so many deadlines with this. We're actually getting really good progress lately. Red goop on the things. Humanoid bodies or suits used to clean the city. Yeah, see, there's stupid goop monsters, but the shells are the compelling part of that, right? Like, I get that that's the actual character. That's dumb. I hate that. This is cool though. These I love. This guy's a little chibi for my taste, but like in general, these are great, right? Those guys work really good. Where are we going? So yeah, I'm just gonna make. Again, the goop is the character sucks, but guy in a weird like gas mask robot suit who has a bizarre and unnatural relationship with machines. I love that. I'm all for that because humans are compelling. Like and in a post-apocalypse, like people that worship machines in a cultish way. That's a cyberpunk idea. It's a post-apocalypse idea. Like it's just a cool, compelling idea in general. And a lot of the societies in Blame do something kind of like that. So it works great. I love that. Mm, mm. Too much protein powder. It's getting fluffy. I'll have to add some more milk to that later. It's almost like eating marshmallow fluff. It's so fluffy. All right. Yeah. So already we're getting some good ideas going here. And again, like just going back and looking at what I'd actually written down, it does so much. You know what? Let's do one of these. Yeah. So we got like kind of a header here. I think I'm gonna kill the vampire UFO. I don't think that's very fun. I was just kind of spitballing ideas, and that's one of the ones that came up from Earthbound that I was like, oh, that'll be fun. But nah, it's dumb. I don't want that anymore. I like the rad roaches. I need to call them something else because I think rad roaches is Fallout. I think it's literally what they're called in Fallout. So I'm just gonna call them radioactive roaches. There we go. Done. Let's see. Ugh, man, machine meld. It sets about the Iron Man. Oblivion worshipping robot. I like the idea that robots have religion. There's something about that that's so cool to me. Hungering Tendril, Forgotten Servitor, Flesh. I actually have several servitors. I have Forgotten Servitor. Do I still want Artificial Angels? I kind of don't. I don't have an idea for that isn't already covered with something else. Abandoned Experiment is fine. That could be a human-made thing. Afterbirth the Machine God is too goopy and weird to throw away. Altered Gods is good. Boomers! Where did I get that idea? Broken Machine God. To be a contrast to the Machine Gods. Hollow Men I like. Erotodrons. Erotodron? That's fine. Erotodron. Sexy robots. Far Servitors. Okay, yeah, so we have Far Servitors, which are the really alien ones. Forgotten Servitors, which are ones that serve completely defunct purposes. Also alien. I should have maybe an Elemental Servitor. There we go. Those are Servitors. Beautiful. Okay, and this is why I deleted Artificial Angel, because we just replaced it with something that's a lot more appropriate, right? Also, I don't think these guys are going to be tormented. A lot of times you'll categorize something for a bestiary, and you'll be like, oh, I'll have a million ideas for this. And you'll have five-ish good ideas, and then you'll have like 40 plus entries, and you'll just be like, I guess this goblin flies? I don't know. Like, and it just becomes kind of tormented, and you can really tell the ideas where they were like trying to fill up the roster, trying to trying to get the blood from the stone with them. You never want to do that. If you're getting blood from a stone, you need to take a break and do something else for a while. Come back to it when you have filled up your little mind with the well of your imagination with ideas that aren't so forced. Because it's bad writing if you do it that way. Oh my goodness, you guys are chatty. Yeah, Tech Priests. Tech Priests are great. Um, yep, Tech Priests are a great example. I think Tech Priests are like the most functional way of doing it. You roaches. Hey, uranium roaches. Just radioactive roaches is fine, I'm sure. Less goop monster, more like organs and DNA controlling the bigger body. Bit fair. So they eat the goop they make from breaking down organic matter. Yeah, so much goop. It's fine. It's just not my thing. The girls will learn to love my boomers, Mason. Yeah. Okay, very nice. All right, so I'm really happy with this. This feels a little more full. Is there anything else I want to do here? I like the human cultists. We deleted 2 and added a shitload. Gosh. I guess that's enough. Yeah, it should be enough. I feel like now we have enough we could really kind of expand it out and it feels reasonably good. Yeah, this is fine. This is all fine. I kind of want to add in the robots I have here too, because I have 2 kinds of robots from this one. The Ancient Robot Servant and the Ancient War Robot, and I feel like those should just be like a part of this. So let's pull them up. Yeah, here you go, boys. Boop, boop. And then we're just going to copy them in. Because they deserve to be here. No animal men, though. Those dirty furries can be somewhere else. Doot doot. There we go. I hate the way it formats. You can see how janky the formatting was in the core book. Actually, this isn't too bad, but yeah, I'm going to put those guys in here because I did something similar for the bestiary up here. See, the bestiaries in this book are more robust than the ones in the core book because I added in more stuff I stole from D&D. So they're much easier to actually use in a living campaign now, which before they were a little bit awkward. Now these things all have percent in layer. You never thought you'd see that in a modern game, huh? Number encountered, which I really like. Treasure that they'll have. Some of them have little societies, so they have these. Like Courtly Intrigues, so that they have reasons to hook them in particular into games, or just stuff that they're doing when they show up in your game. So lots of really good stuff here. Like, yeah, look at this. So the Raksha aren't just like tiger kung fu guys. They're also nobility, and they serve as like a bunch of boss monsters in the demon city. Like, this is great right here. This is really good stuff. All right, so I need, let's see here. Oh god, I love the Maricha. These guys are amazing. I love this art too. This artist is fantastic. Goodness, I need to steal all this stuff. So this is the template I generally want to write towards right here. We're gonna go right here. This will be enough. We'll just do one of these, and we're gonna just templateify that text. There's a little trick I've learned. There's so little red text, and there's so much completed design. It's so beautiful. I don't like all this white space hanging out. I definitely need to fix that up. But we'll get there when we get there. You'll notice there's not a lot of white space in the rest of the book. That's feedback I received in the layout of the first one, and I agreed with it. I was not happy with how much white space they had. Alright, let's go down here where I haven't really done anything yet. We'll just boop. Alright, here we go. So, we're just going to put in descriptive text, which is in italics. Descriptive text. And then we'll just put the little number symbol right here. And then we'll do number / number. Actually, 1D number would be funny. Number D number. There we go. Treasure. Treasure text. Special. Special text. Which should not be special. Ferocity number. These can all just be numbers. Just Control C and Control V these bad boys. You'll notice that I'm not the most skilled at doing this effectively. Mechanical being. These are going to be pretty much all mechanical being. Further text. There we go. So now we've got a pretty good little template we can add to all of these. Boop. So man, an experiment. We should be able to do this. Yeah, look at that. That's nice. And boop. Altar gods. Some of these actually have a nice little chunk of description on them. Burmas! Broken machine god. We're just gonna do one of those. Ah, the hollow men, the empty men. Sexy machines. Just in case I forget what those are supposed to be. Far servitors. Flesh harvesters. Gonna harvest that flesh. Boop. Hungry tendrils. The tendrils are so hungry. Yeah, now we're kind of getting an idea of how big this is all going to be once it's done. Machine gun in my hand. I should probably make these bigger. Yeah, we'll go with technique section header on these. I don't like how small these are. Those are getting lost. Yeah, technique section is really nice though. Techniques. Yeah, so this is kind of the more boring part of the stream, I'm afraid, where I'm just kind of doing like some pre-formatting stuff. Boop. Talk amongst yourselves. Add a little more space between these so I can see what I'm doing. I hate walls of text, even when I'm just writing. Yeah. Very nice. Okay, I think, yeah, I'm going to need to do one of those. It's already starting to look a lot better, though. Now that I've got some of the concept work in these, and I've got a little bit of light formatting. What I might do is skip ahead and look at the lores and just do the same thing to that. So it's all kind of ready for, basically ready to get filled with the actual, not necessarily final writing, but the initial actual writing. Might be a good way just to end the stream, just to give you guys an idea of like this kind of boring but necessary step where you're just kind of like doing the concept work and then just kind of like you can see how this is very rapidly going to get filled up like one little step at a time. You can work in a direct sequential way and fill these up and everything's ready for you. All the formatting's ready, you know. So if you're doing your own game, I highly recommend doing it this exact way, right? It's really easy for GMs to kind of flip through this. You'll notice that it's, well, not anymore, but initially it was in perfect alphabetical order. Again, I inherited that from Dungeons and Dragons. It worked there, and by golly, it works everywhere. There we go. And they all have these wonderful eye catches with lots of space around them, so you can see individual things. So it just makes it just so much easier on the eyes whenever you're running it. You're not like, you know, oh, these are all bleeding together. I can't see. I don't know what's happening. None of that. None of that crap. Oh, toxic elementals. Okay. See, I completely lost these guys. I didn't even see them. There we go. I think that's my goop monster, is toxic elementals. This is fine. I don't want to format these too much. I don't have any ideas for them. Although, these guys feel like they could just be put right over here. I don't know if I want the individual elemental servitors to be detailed enough that they each get an entry like this, or how I want to do it. So what I'll probably do is I'll do a general stat line for them, and then or general stat line for the dragons and grunts, and then any special things are going to be right under those. So that'll keep those a little like glommed together in kind of a reasonably referenceable way. Where's H? Yeah, here we go. Right here. Human machine cultists, right before hungering tendrils. Gorgeous. Let's save that. Look how nice this looks now. We've definitely got something here. Alright, let's beef these up a little bit. I think they're 9. They need to be 12. I think that's right. Yeah. So we'll do this again. Give myself a little more space. Oh boy. Okay. Boop. And then we'll just put these right under it. Oops. That's okay. Beautiful. Nailed it. Okay. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Wrong one. Do 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 do. Look at that. Beautiful. All right. So these guys, goodness. I think that they're not in perfect alphabetical order, because I think if I'm being consistent with this bestiary, I think all the ones that were initially in the core book got tacked on the end. I believe so. Yeah, so here we go. Demons from the Lone Wolf Fist core book. This is just going to say robots from the Lone Wolf Fist core book. I don't remember if I have any other robots. I know I've got those two. I know I've got the C-3POs and the big wheel robot thing from Armitage the Third, but I don't know if I have any other ones. Oh, and I guess you're probably not a mechanical being, and you're not mechanical beings. You're a mechanical being now. You've lost your humanity. That sucks for you. You're not mechanical beings. You're like dudes. There we go. I think... yeah. I think we're good. Alright, rock on. So, I'll double check the Lone Wolf Fist core book to make sure that I don't have any other robots. But... yeah, so far so good. We're just going to make sure these guys have a little more personality here. That's just going to improve the usability of the core book a little bit. That's a lot of fun. Okay, so there's that. I don't think I actually have a thing for lores. I got the hex crawling thing, but I don't have a lores thing. So what I'm probably going to do here is go right here. Yeah, right here. Are you gonna? Okay. And we're gonna add some pages. So we're just gonna add 2 pages after this, and this is gonna be the lores. Babil Kiminar lores. I want to know what these are gonna look like. Here we go. Because I know that I'm gonna at least have, at a minimum, one for all 3 different major nations, and then one kind of general one. What I'd like to have is a lore that is like the elemental lore, so that if you have to make one of these dungeons on the fly, you can use the elemental lore and just pick from the appropriate charts. And I'd also like one where you're just kind of going through the weird wastes deeper into Babil Kiminar. So I think that's going to wind up being a minimum of 5 lores, which is pretty chunky, but that should give you a robust enough thing that you can have a whole setting out of it. So I'm pretty happy with that size. Let's make some bullet points of that so I don't forget it. We'll just do lore. Oh boy. What did I do? Goodness gracious, that's not good at all. Let's scoop back up here and just kind of grab some text that isn't weird. There you go. Beautiful. All right. So, more ideas. Obviously, we're gonna have People's Fists. We're gonna have. Oh, we should bullet point these. But yeah, there we go. People's Fists. Dragon States. Mammon. The Far Reaches is what I'll call it, and then we'll have the Elemental Factory Cathedrals. There we go. So those are my ideas. Boop, 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 boop. Boop. Okay, so that's a good start. Let's see what the chat's saying here. The art is amazing, dude. I love the art. I got some good artists. They're both pestering me for more work too. I don't want to, like, I still gotta physically print out and send these books out. So I don't want to dip too much more deeply into the art. I'm gonna need a little more art before this thing's finished, but I want to have the main writing done before I commission art to fill in any gaps. I wouldn't mind main writing and like some nice initial layout, because there's going to be gaps, right? There's a few that have already become kind of inevitable just from the way I'm doing the layout of this book. And it's not going to be that difficult to be like, okay, well, here's a gap. Here's the size and type of art I need to round this out, you know? Even doing a sheet of incidental art, which I've had them do before, would be kind of nice, just to add a little bit of flair throughout the text. So they're going to get more work. I don't want to do that until I know what I need. And initially, I really splurged on getting great art. Like I paid pretty well for these your Kickstarter funds at work, folks. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so let's go back to, and I actually pulled up this document initially because I wanted to see how my lores looked in the core book, and I wanted to compare that with what I did for the Hell lores. Yeah, there we go. Good old Suicide Heaven. So, okay. The lore's in the core book. And this is a little more concept work. But again, this is still work, you know. I think we'll wrap this up in the next 30 minutes or so. So, these have an introduction to the place, the volatility and stability, which kind of gives you the idea of how often you're going to encounter stuff and what you're going to encounter. The type of terrain, like a quick description, and then it immediately launches into the charts. The first one is how do you integrate these guys into a campaign that doesn't directly involve them. I really like that. That's a good little piece of design right there, because it's a characterful way that they would be involved that would kind of, like, each of these clans has like a role within a story, or a role like within the broader setting. So, like, you want them to do something for you. When it comes to Suicide Heaven, you want there to be an assassination or some kind of organized crime thing happening, right? That's like their hook into broader society. Whenever people need that done, this is where they come. So this is a good hook to go back to this place. There's a master encounter list, which is all the different monsters you might generally find in the broader area. And then there is the groups that you'll find within there. Really happy with this because it gives you an idea immediately of like the way their society's arranged and what kind of groups exist within it, what their function is, how those cultures interact with each other. And because culture is something that is malleable within the game, like, you need to have enough there that they can, you know, malleole it. Malleole it. They gotta malleole it. That's a word. I've definitely read that before I made it up just now. The Nouveau Riche Orphanage. Oh, these are great. Truck Labs. Cabal of Sorcerers. I've got big monsters here, like the biggest baddies, the weird armies. Yeah, the Chinese hopping vampire army. Disasters that might befall you, in this case the Fog of Lost Souls, and then the Titan, which is Zhanglu, 9-headed leech god of poison. Actual real guy in mythology, and he does this stuff. It's nasty. Let me see, I've got the NPC name generator, which I'm very proud of. Good old quirk, motive, and name. That's a nice one, two, three, four right there. Um, Tract and field list, if you need to generate a setting appropriate tract and put some fields in it on the fly, easy enough to do. Hey, look, they have Demon Gladiator pits too, and Hellish Citadel strongholds, and even mazes of haunted streets. Good stuff. Good stuff. Um, wow, I really stuck with some of these themes without realizing it going into the hell part of the book. I've got a random spice, which just gives them something cool they can add to a game. In this case, they have designer drugs, and then these are kind of the heart of the lores, the strengths and struggles. Strengths is reasons that you would go to a place, stuff to steal, basically, or powers that could be useful in terms of motivation for the bad guys or the good guys. And then I've got struggles, which are my version of giving you everything that you need to fill out. Because the volatility charts aren't just bad guys show up. A lot of the volatility charts are an event will happen that will further along this current thing that's happening. You might think of that as a plot. I don't like thinking of them as plots. I like thinking of them as unfolding events that have discrete stages that are like places where you can on-ramp players. And that's what these are supposed to do, right? They give you a premise, like what is the big deal, an NPC cast for it of necessary NPCs. Necessary are very colorful NPCs. Hooks, and each one of these hooks can get turned into a step along the sort of like chain of events that culminates in the end of the thing. And then things. I actually got things because these are based on the Yunsun method, and things is something that was in Yunsun. It's just elements or images or something that you could read over as a GM that'll kind of get your creative juices flowing. Things that you could just kind of sprinkle in as spice. That's what things are, and I actually love them. Almost all of these are just anime, by the way. So, oh goodness, I don't remember what they are now. I didn't write them down for myself. I didn't get any notes, so even I don't know what I was trying to. In some of these cases, I'm like, what was I even referencing here? There's all something, right? This is all some anime I saw, but I don't remember what they are anymore. Oh, that's so fluffy. Oh goodness. Ugh. So okay, that's pretty good for the core setting. The Hell Lords are a little different, though, as I recall. And again, I'm reminding myself of what I've already written because it's been a little bit. This is the last thing I wrote in the Hell part of the book, and you'd think it would be fresh in my mind. It is not. Okay, so the first thing. Here we go. The first thing was philosophically, I wanted to know what I was doing with the lore and how I wanted it to feel. And fundamentally, I really wanted it to feel like a big dungeon. So, like, philosophically, I actually wrote down, like, the world of Ashes and Ghosts is a mega dungeon. Like, I want you to be able to kind of feel the way I felt, the sort of giddiness at the idea of the enormity of a dungeon that I felt whenever I got Maze of the Blue Medusa. Which, to this day, whenever I actually think about going into the deeper parts of that dungeon with an adventuring party, I get just giddy at the. It's so big. And there's just something wonderful about being able to get lost in this endlessly enormous, spiraling, multi-dimensional dungeon. Like, oh, that's so cool. So I wanted that feeling. I wanted it to be concrete and enormous, but finite, right? So that's the vibe I wanted to go to. And I kind of explain how you do that here. And I really want that same vibe from these lores. But unlike the Maze of the Blue Medusa, which is, again, a set, finite amount of things that was designed concretely over the course of years, I don't have years, A, and B, I don't want hell to be just one thing, and I don't want Babel Kamanar to be just one thing. I want it to be lots of potential things. I want your imagination to be the driving force behind it. That being said, obviously you bought my book to use it, so I got to put some things in there. Oh, excuse me. So this is the unifying lore. This is what makes all of hell unified enough that as you're traveling between the different like giant demon cities, you can kind of encounter the same things over and over, right? Or at least elements that kind of have a unity to them. Like demons all share one general culture, which is the culture of Naraka, and so they all have hells or they all have names that are based off actual demonic names. I think these are Raksha names, I want to say. So I think that's their dominant culture is the Rakshasa. So that's what these are. This is a big list of Rakshasa names from mythology. There's tons of them, specifically named ones, which is great. So if you need a name for your demon, here you go. You know, nice and easy. And they all have names that kind of go along with these. 100 was enough for Vornheim, the complete city kit. So I figure 100's enough for me. I could again. There were enough names. I could have done 300 or 400, but I kept it to 100. Let's see. Boop. If you just want a random demon, I took the Bestiary and I put these here, and then I gave them all personalities, right? So the way those demons show up and what they're doing is kind of involved here, and their personality is here. You'll note they don't have motives. The Bestiary itself does a very good job of motivating the demons, so I didn't really need to add that here because these have a secondary entry in the Bestiary. So I'll probably do something like this. Rock a volatility chart. This is lovely. I love that there's a general volatility. There is no stability in hell. Chaos is their order. Yeah, you can't change that. It always has a base level of sucking in hell. And it's a coin flip if something shows up whenever you start using your magic, right? And the encounters and events charts come from different places. I really liked that. Because they're, again, all the terrain is smashed into each other, and it's never the same orientation twice. Um, so, yeah, this is a lot of fun. Let's see. This, I, okay, so I actually did, I want to say, 4 or 5 at least complete versions of these lores before we got them into this final state. One of those mini versions, I had kind of lost all like boundaries and cohesion, and I was just in utter chaos. Like, what the hell are people even doing in hell? And so this chart arose from that. What players want and need while in hell. And I just thought about it in terms of like what motivates players in a role-playing game generally, as generically as I could. And I was like, okay, if they get as lost in the chaos as I got, because I was exploring hell, guys, that's what happens, you get lost in the chaos, these will be good things to orient the players. We're lost in hell, everything's insane, like, what do we do? Oh, hey, you know what we could use? Some information. There's a bizarre and fun experience we could go to. Oh, look, a toy. Real estate in hell? Why not? You know, they want pets, they want students, they want new techniques, they want opportunities for heroism, they want access to black markets, they need healing, they want minions, they want access to cool, powerful NPCs, they want some friends, they want some secrets, they want some places to party. That's just a thing players want, right? They want to get into barroom brawls. So whenever you throw something like that in front of them, even if they weren't specifically motivated towards it, even if you don't put a big flashing neon sign towards it, if they're just wandering around hell, and you're like, well, now what? Boom. Almost all of these things are guaranteed to get the player's attention and interest, okay? If, you know, you're wandering around and they see a cool pet, dollars to donuts, they are going to want to ride that pet or own it or something, right? I don't care. Players love having pets. Oh my god, is it a little eyeball monster that'll be my friend? Hell yes, brother, I want one. And all of a sudden, they're talking to your demon NPCs, right? So, very important chart, that one. Hell is a chaotic place, such as that even the guy who was designing the damn lores for it got lost in it. So that chart was there to help everybody out. Let's see, what else? Oh, another one that wound up being really important, diabolic intrigues. What's motivating these demons? Like, they're immortal evil beings that like have to deal with each other. What are their motives? How do they relate to each other? So this is kind of like my feuding aristocrats chart. Uncooperative and dislike one another. I like that. It's fun. This should have one of these. Yeah. I don't like the way that formatted, but we're going to learn spelling. I guess I could just make this a little smaller. Let's do 8 points. There we go. I don't like that formatting. Okay, so another extremely useful chart for kind of orienting yourself in the vastness and chaos of hell. But I need something like this for Bab el-Kim and Arm, because it's equally alien, right? Whenever you go into the depths, even if you're like, we have a map to a cathedral, or we're traveling in a diplomatic mission between two great nations, or whatever, it's such a bizarre and outlandish and alien and dangerous place that I want something like this that kind of has an overarching unifying aspect, right? Because again, I think it would be really easy just to get swept up in the weirdness. And I want there to be some kind of underpinning to it that gives it a logical cohesion. It's a mega dungeon, it's not just raw chaos, right? So this is going to be important. Ugh. That water chaser is helping with the fluffiness, by the way. Alright, and then I've got 7 lores total for each of the individual nation things in Hell. I'm getting tired at this point, you can tell. Alright, and those have shrines. The encounter chart for that place. This is kind of similar to the core book ones. The bosses, which I thought was really important, and what's going on with them. Then I've got, gosh, what are these? I want to say I had 3 kind of societies, and then kind of a general terrain thing. Let me see if I did that generally. Yeah, places of death. So yeah, this is like the place generator, and then these are like the society generators. Okay. Yeah, so it should be place societies. Yeah, place societies. Okay. Alright, so that's how I did with those. Wow, these are really weird and cool. Damn, I did a really good job with this, actually. So now I want to play my own game. That's how you know you've done it right. Give me I gotta take a little break. Alright, Wizard Drug, TM. Will there be electric sheep in the machine goblin? Ah! Only in robot dreams. Only in android dreams. That's where the electric sheep can dwell. I gotta put that reference in. An important question of hell, what does the space between the cities look like exactly? There's no between the cities. The cities are the fallen bodies of the Ashura, and they're just rammed together. So there is no in between. If you sometimes the border between them is a river, and those rivers are the body of those are Kagare, which are the body of Yamata no Orochi. So as close as they get is that they have a border where there's like the concubine dragoness demon between them. So that's as close as you get. Is there some kind of demonic ecosystem with animals, or the only thing hunting around is the demons themselves? It is demons and damned souls. So damned souls go to Naraka to be punished hideously until their karma is cleansed. If you torture a damned soul to death in an appropriate way for the horrors that sins it inflicted in life, then it generates hell money, which is the currency of hell, and demons love doing this, and the damned souls are incentivized to do it to each other because having money makes things easier. Just it's the same in hell as in the world. Who would have thought that hell engineered the concept of money? But there you go. But yeah, so it's demons that go around causing misery to damned souls. They also hunt and fight and kill each other and what have you. They have their own societies. But yeah, that's the shape of things. Some demons are more like animals and beasts, and some are more like human and have more intelligence. Some are a hideous mixture of both. You know, it's hell. How are new demons made again? Depends on the demon. Rakshasa just have babies, right? Sometimes they interbreed with humans, and that's where you get rad scorpions. Some of them lay big clutches of eggs, like the Urana do that. They're like big centipede demons with like human arms instead of centipede legs. Most of the human-esque ones just have babies. Some of them seem to just kind of spawn from hell, like the Akaname, I think they're called, are like cloud demons, and like wherever there's a sky, it fills up with the forlorn dreams of uh, the Ashura that's underneath of it, and those congeal into those demons. So that's where they come from. So some of them are made just magically by other demons. Some of them seem to be degenerate human souls that have become damned forever, like the Nividoc supplicants. As far as I didn't give a specific origin to them, but like I feel like whenever you completely lose yourself in hell and you've lost all chance of redemption, that's what happens to you. So yeah, they all have different things. Generally, I would say they come from the Ashura in some way, either as descendants or as like polyps that kind of grow out of them. Yeah, so that's the general. In general, the Ashura are the source of genesis of new demons, either directly or indirectly. How do they grow in rank station? They really love nobility. If you're born a noble demon, generally the way you get more powerful is learning kung fu. You can learn your patron's kung fu. Uh, there's only a couple kinds of nobility in hell, and different ashura have different ideas of what nobility should be. Like, for example, the Shinigami, the nobility that serve Yama, the demon god, the death god, they're a bureaucracy. So generally, they get where they need to go by following the rules and sabotaging their superiors. Which, I mean, that works for hell, right? Um, so yeah, they're ranked based on their actual capabilities within that. The Rakshasa are just descended from Ravana, and so different families have different like holdings of power, just like nobles in the human world. Like some have more hell money, and some have more magic resources, and some have better kung fu or whatever. They have social. Some make art. They're nobles. They do all kinds of weird stuff. And so a classic way for those ensouled demons that have the capacity to learn kung fu to become more powerful is to become greater demons. They just learn more kung fu, and they kind of become more like their ashuric sire. And those guys eventually become like minor gods of their ashura. And those are extremely powerful demons. There's one demon that's kind of like the major domo of all of hell, and it's completely random who that guy is. Again, it's a station that's kind of bestowed whenever the Ashura can agree on one, like the majority of the Ashura. There's 7 Ashura, so there's always a tiebreaker guy. And so that guy just kind of gets a whole lot of weird, unique powers that only he gets. So, I don't know if that actually answered your question. Pets, guess the answer, are there hell animals? Yes. I mean, like, yeah, I wouldn't call them animals, but they're definitely something that's animal-ish. Eyeball friend is best friend. Canon confirmed. Yeah, of course Eyeball's the best. Radshasa. Exactly. The idea of demons having babies raising them is a funny one because I chose to imagine they are proud enough to actually put their best into raising them. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, the Rakshasa are unbelievably proud, right? Their grandfather is their god and their city. Like, could you imagine, like, actual human nobles that could literally claim that? You'd never hear the end of those guys, right? So every new Rakshasa is like this huge celebration. They're constantly bragging. They send them to the best schools and what have you. That's why I think I did like a hell college for them. They teach them like magic, forbidden kung fu, and crazy stuff. They send them on sojourns out to the human realm. They pamper their kids. Of course they would. Which means most of them wind up as worthless layabouts, obviously, and giant disappointments, heaping shame on their family. And that's where you come in. You can 0 to hero those bad boys, or kill them. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Mm. Yeah, good old couches potatoes. There you go. Man, these are really good. Okay, so I don't know if this exact breakdown will work super well for the robot part of this book. Oh gosh, I spent a lot of time bloviating, didn't I? I like this bit. So we're gonna let me see. How much do I? Can I just? I might just be able to grab this whole thing. I like this nice clean 4-page layout. So we're gonna do one of these, copy the whole thing, and we're just gonna kind of make templates to get an idea of how big this is gonna be. The lores are going to take a little bit to write because there's going to be a lot of like conceptual work with them. Um, these should go. The bestiary should fill up pretty fast. I feel like we've got enough that if I don't add anything else, this should be satisfactory. I sort of feel like there's room for more. I don't really know exactly what I want to put in there, but as I'm writing it, I'm sure I'll think of something. And another thing is going to happen is I'm gonna scroll down here and I'm gonna start making the lores, and then inevitably, right? Inevitably, like, oh, you know what would be cool, and there you go. It happens every time. All right, so let's add pages. We're gonna. How many pages do we want? We want 4 per thing. That's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. I'll do at least 20, plus 2 for the general lore, and I would say I probably need at least an additional 2 just to talk about what I'm trying to accomplish with it. So that's going to leave us with, what's this? Okay, that's going to leave us with this. Oh, what did I just do? I screwed something up. Yep, oh yeah, I screwed that up. Let's Control Z that bad boy. And we're gonna boop boop. Boop boop, right here. Here we go. I'm gonna add pages. After. Yes, not before, after. Okay, so, what did I just do? 22? 24 is what I did. There's an easier way to do this. I didn't start there, though. Okay, so, there we are. So now, we're just gonna Control V. Oh, I don't like that at all. Why did that format that way? Okay. Wait a minute. Wait a bloody minute. What did I just do wrong? Why are you behind this text? Why would you do that to me? Okay, there we go. That's better. That's better. Alright. So we'll do text. Goodness. Alright. Yeah, there we go. And then we're going to make a clean version of these. And then we'll just do, I'm going to make this just say text. This is going to have more going on. Let me scoot back up here. There we go. Yeah, life and crawling are the 2 things here. Alright, so let's scoot this back down here. You guys are seeing how the sausage is made. Alright. 3 paragraphs. So, a lot of times I'll just write in what I expect. The people's fist. Crawling the people's fists. There we go. That's 3 paragraphs. This is like, how many paragraphs is this? My goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll commit to 7 paragraphs. There we go. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so now, I don't really want to go and make a blank version of all this right now. It seems time consuming. And I've got 4 minutes left. But what I'll do for the remainder of these empty pages is I'll make a blank version of this, and I will just copy this whole thing for all of those, and then we'll do something similar with this, the unifying lore for Bab-el Kaminar, and then I'll at least want 2 pages. Like, these 2 I think are critical. These are a little more... This is kind of introducing you to hex crawling. I don't really think I need to do that again in this text. I might do one of these for dungeon crawling, since this is a much more compacted world. But yeah, so... And then that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just basically going to copy the template of this over, and then that's going to be the writing That's going to be the template I follow for the writing for the lores. So that's where we're going to be. We didn't really do a lot of like super new work here, but I think you guys have a pretty clear idea of what I've got left to do before we're done, and we're going to be I'm going to be offline beavering away on this for the next 2-3 days, and then try to get it finished by the end of the week. I think, let me double check the chat one more time, and I think we're probably good. Yeah, see, extra reason why Couch's Pay was kicked out of hell in our play by post. The effort and the guy did not even make any kind of plan. Exactly. Wastrel Demon Scions is a huge plot hook, and I anticipate that there will be many of them. Which I now used to have 6 Fang Teas a guide opportunity. Now, if only people answer the chat more than once a week. Hey, I'm busy! Joel bloviating of the Fifth Throne. I need to put bloviating in my title. I talk way more than I punch. A living glitch, some kind of horror born from the god machine's logic fails or leads to a paradox. You know what's crazy? That's not even the first time I've heard that. In Silent Titans, there's something like that, like a glitch monster. So that's a well-worn concept. But yeah, I think that's it for this stream, folks. I have had a lot of fun hanging out with everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm gonna see if I can export this to YouTube. I think it was like 3 hours. It was crazy. But I'm sure the rest of the backers who couldn't be here for this would love to, hear me bloviate. We're gonna bloviate all over the damn place. But that's enough for now. Thanks again, and I'm gonna get back to writing. I'll see you on the flip side, folks.